So if you want to learn how to use some of the bells and whistles like fancy backgrounds and music and polls and chats and breakout rooms, please go to our website and look at our events page and sign up for that. That's going to be just a fantastic session. We are also really deep into our Think Local campaign. So I wanted to remind you to shop local, eat local, support local. It has been a tough season for many of our retailers, restaurants, and service providers. And we know that for every dollar you spend locally, 67 cents stays in the community, paid in wages to our neighbors, taxes to our government entities, and services and goods from other suppliers. So please, please, when you're thinking about making purchases or finding services, think local first, and be safe, right? Wear those masks, stay distant, and if you really want to be safe, use some of those contactless ordering systems. So thank you for letting me give that commercial. We can't say it enough. So we're going to launch in on our very first virtual Third House session. This is a first for us. We've certainly never hosted a meeting with this many people. We're up to 83 so far. And it's likely we have folks of varying abilities on the call. Some of us have used Zoom every day and others haven't. So we have gone ahead and muted everyone just to sort of keep a limit to those barking dogs and ringing phones in the background. So if you'll just remember to keep yourself muted, we would appreciate that. That just makes it a better experience for everyone. And ask you to give us all, those of us running the call and speaking on the call, a little bit of grace, because as I said, this is a challenge with this big of a group. And I know as the host, I'm likely to make a mistake or two. So ask you to give us some grace. We have invited all 5 of our state senators and representatives who represent us in the Indiana General Assembly. We have heard from Senator Walker and Representative Lauer, and they are on the call. We've also invited Senator Cook, Representative Everhart, and Representative Lucas. We have the chat feature turned off right now. We have so many mail-in questions that we're going to start with those. And I know some of you will have questions that go unanswered. Just remember, this is the first meeting of a very long session, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to get to all of the burning issues. Today, we may not have enough time to get to everything. So we'll do the best we can. And if we have a chance at the end, we'll turn on chat so you can send your questions in. I want to thank our sponsor, faithful sponsor, Natural Choices for Healthful Living on Central Avenue. Speaking of Think Local, remember to support businesses like Natural Choices. As we begin, I'm going to ask Senator Walker first and then Representative Lauer to make some introductory remarks and begin to set the stage for us. Ryan's got a few technical difficulties, so we'll have some time for him to get set up. It is a very different session this year, and it is going to be a long one. There are a lot of bills and things are working differently because of COVID. Senator Walker, would you unmute yourself and just tell us a little bit about the changes in the way you're conducting your business, and then launch in and let us know about some of the things you're particularly concerned about.
Thank you, Cindy, and good morning. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm speaking from my cubicle at the State House. I got up here early this morning because I'll be going directly from here to Elections Committee this morning, and where I have 2 bills this morning that we're hearing. So we're getting to the people's business Monday morning. Um, think locally. I appreciate that comment, Cindy. I agree with that. And I say it works for politics as well as it does for business. You know, part of our things being different this year is all of the noise at the national level has a tendency to draw people's attention away from the things that are very, very concrete and very much to how we live in Indiana. And I don't want anyone on the call or anyone in the state to forget that we impact your lives, hopefully positively, but that just because we don't have the drama and the anxiety and the tensions that you see at the federal level doesn't mean that there aren't hard issues to work through. But in thinking locally, I'm also encouraging everyone to remember that you have a much greater voice on the state level and on the local level than you do on the national level. You just have access to folks like myself and others that live and work among you. And I was born and raised in Columbus. Most of you know that. I want Columbus to be the home for my children. My son has now bought a house in Columbus and hopefully continues will work here for coming years. And so it behooves you and behooves me to put aside some of the wrestling that has gone on and focus on the things that are here. Um, what's different this year? We are holding public hearings and committee meetings where we are putting those who are offering in-person testimony in a separate room and using good practices there for safe distancing and so on. It does. I don't hear as well as I'd like to, and using a format like this, it's very similar in committee where we're using electronics to connect ourselves. We don't allow that outside the building for reasons of, we had 75 people testifying roughly in person last week or 2 weeks ago in a bill where we can manage that workload or that flow. But if you had the ability for 500 people to raise their hand and say, I'd like to testify, we'll never get the work done in terms of moving any bills forward. So we don't want to filibuster things, but we also want to make sure that people have a voice. We are encouraging written testimony, and I was reading some of those things that were reiterations of what I'd heard in committee, but also new information regarding some of those bills. So please, you're always encouraged to submit written testimony, and when we work hard to see that gets shared with all the committee members. Lastly, I'll say just in opening, setting the priorities that we have, you can put up a dartboard and you can just about hit a priority right now for the state in terms of the things that we've got to consider. There were over 1,000 bills filed. I didn't count them all because we won't hear them all. We won't have a debate on all of them. And so we are still in the process of things filtering out. Things will drop out, things will rise to the surface, but we don't have a formal process. We don't have any real a set principled approach to how we decide what our priorities are. It is very much an ad hoc priority. It is very much dependent upon what committee chairman and what leadership would like to make a priority. And so some things will just fall off the table and it will go unnoticed, and other things you'll think there's nothing being done, but in fact there's conversations and discussions on certain topics. I've already seen articles talking about this session. We have 2 constitutional requirements this year, and that's it. We have to pass a budget for the next biennium, and we have to create districts for political redistricting of the state of Indiana based on census information we'll receive from the federal government. Well, we're not going to receive that information until April. Our session is over by the end of April. And so you can imagine that's going to create a very compact process, or it may push us into an overtime position. Neither one of those is a great option, but we do have statutory limits on when we get that done and constitutional limits as well. And so it's not to say that just because it's not making the news today, because we're not having a hearing about it today, that there isn't work being done on these topics. I did see a preview of at least one of the write-in questions, and it pertains to matters that are still part of the governor's budget proposal. When we talk about the governor's budget, we talk about the House budget, we talk about the Senate budget. And each one of us starts with a baseline, and then we talk and work out our differences. The governor's budget actually is not an official document. Uh, it's not a bill. The governor's priorities are in the governor's budget, but the House introduces a bill and the Senate does not introduce a bill. All bills regarding appropriations have to originate in the House, but we will take work from the House and combine that with Senate work, throw out some things, add some things, and so again, it's an informal process, but those negotiations have already begun, and we're already attempting to set priorities. Just lastly, one of the real challenges this year is where's the money going to come from? Where's the money going? We as legislators, at least I am, are still chasing, trying to figure out what of the CARE Act has been used to backfill what would otherwise be absent resources for the state. What is trickling directly to the local level, and what is going in the form of a direct payment, what's going in the form of a grant opportunity, and trying to understand where our needs are and whether or not they're being met. It's a challenge with some of the requirements for the federal distribution have been very organic and changing as we move forward. And I think some of them are still in flux even now regarding how we actually intend to use some of the federal relief dollars that have been allocated directly to the State House. So it's a lot on our plate this year. That's my intro, and that was very wordy. I didn't want to talk that long, but
That's all right. I'm going to ask if Representative Lauer switched computers and is on the call. He was having a little bit of trouble.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Cindy. Good morning, Senator Walker. I appreciate the opportunity to join you this morning. I had a little technical difficulty. I could see you all and everything looked fine, but I couldn't hear you. So I ran and got a different computer, and it looks like the video is a little fuzzy on this one. So I'll get this worked out for next time. But it's great to see everybody. Can you hear me okay, Cindy?
Can hear you fine.
Great. I'll just get right into it. We've started our session, and things are progressing. They're going steady but forward. We had a break last week. They shut down the legislative activities up in Indy for they were concerned about security. Thank goodness nothing was materialized with that, and so we're just going to continue on with the business for the people. We've got a really important and I think bold agenda for this session, and we want to make sure that we're focusing on our number one priorities. First and foremost, we need to make sure that we're getting the healthcare needs of all of our citizens, that the vaccine increasingly is available, and that's progressing well. We need to make sure that we pass a responsible, balanced budget, and we can get into those details. But our fiscal situation in Indiana is more positive than it was just a few months ago. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we continue to fund our priorities, to fund education, and make sure that our dollars are going to our schools, and make sure that we have the resources available to get the help that our small businesses need and our communities need during this pandemic, because there's still some time to go, and there's work to be done. We're in a very strong financial position in Indiana. Our work over the years has afforded us, unlike other states, we're in a very strong fiscal position here in Indiana with a AAA credit rating, and that has helped us to navigate through this pandemic without having to worry about money and can we fund the services that we need and get the people the help that they need when they need it. We still have healthy reserves, and in our upcoming budget, I expect us to maintain very healthy reserves. We want to make sure that our businesses get an additional amount of help. We want to make sure that the federal dollars continue to flow, that they're still available from the CARES Act, but then any follow-ups. We're also focusing very strongly on broadband. There are some good bills. I think perhaps we'll talk about those today to expand not only the funding and have I think we're looking at $100 million investment, but we want to make sure that not only that the places that are dead spots that are not being served today, but also that that even if you have internet, that you have more options, that you have better quality service and speeds as well. So there's a number of issues there with broadband that we're looking to make sure that all Hoosiers have access to a high quality and affordable broadband internet. So there's a lot of other topics going on. I'd love to talk about what you want to talk about, the people here in Columbus and Bartholomew County. And then mention I've got a number of bills I've offered, and I do have a hearing this Wednesday on my bill to help some of the most vulnerable, our little infants. And my bill is called the Safe Haven 911, and so it's expanding the safe haven protections for infants. And including 911 to be able to call 911 to get for a mother or a parent in distress to get their child the help that they need. So I'm looking forward to your questions, and good morning.
Thank you, Representative Lauer. We've had a number of submitted questions, and I'd like to, since you mentioned broadband, maybe kick it over to Senator Walker to talk about Senator Zay's Senate Bill 337, renewed interest in broadband connectivity. Both employers and educational leaders recognize that we have underserved areas with either no connectivity or very slow speeds, and that creates inequities and difficulties for employees working from home and students who are going through the process of learning via the internet. So can you address that that bill and how it might address the need here in Bartholomew County?
Well, unfortunately, I haven't spent a lot of time with Senator Zay's bill, but on the topic, I know that as we've gone through the summer and the year, the high demand on internet access service has really pushed the system. I'm kind of surprised in a way it's held up as well as it has, but there are still clearly areas where there aren't good options. I'm always hesitant to roll out a physical hardware solution when, as we see developing, there are a lot of over-the-air solutions as well that are promising in certain parts of the state. I'm assuming Senator Zay is looking to provide more matching money for locals to build out non-competing systems. So another one of the concerns you always have is that when we talk about underperforming assets, myself and others have incurred a lot of frustration trying to get Zoom meetings to work, and then you've got someone else in the household who's trying to do some CAD CAM design over their computer, etc. And you find out you've got all these lag times. We don't want to be creating a undue advantage for one competitor or another by funding their infrastructure development when you have a system that's already been spent and paid for and is being depreciated as private asset. So anything that we do along those lines needs to recognize that the competition is also changing rapidly. I would love to see fiber optics for the last mile at every home in every household in the state. I think that'd be great. Um, Reading about even areas that are farm fields, a lot of concern and discussion that's been held at the federal level is, well, the farmers today are using equipment where they are Wi-Fi connected, and it's changing the way that the seed is being distributed from the seed box in the equipment that's on the back of their tractor, row by row, based upon soil analysis and based upon yields of prior years from that field that were, again, samples taken real time so that you got the maximum efficiency. We can't capitalize on those kind of systems where we don't have that connectivity to use that kind of technology. So I support anything that's going to, again, just be sure that we're not stepping on existing private infrastructure investment. I want to come alongside those private providers. And no more than I want to see a federal one-size-fits-all election model, do I want to see a federal one-size-fits-all internet solution. So just all of those caveats are full. Let's go full steam ahead with all of those protections in place. So that's going to bog the process down, obviously. But I'll take a look at Senator Zay's language. I haven't really looked at it much yet.
That's helpful. Thank you. Representative Lauer, I have a different question for you. We are aware that the COVID vaccine is rolling out and some of our neighbors have already received them. Can you comment on a bill that would give Hoosier workers the right to refuse employer mandated vaccines?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are certainly citizens who are concerned about their right to have the vaccine or not have the vaccine. It is true that in Indiana, it is not mandatory, and even though I would encourage our citizens, especially those at the high risk categories, 70 and up, who can get them today. But in our current code, there cannot be compulsory vaccinations or in general. So there's always a religious exemption as well. But I think you'll get into some troubling territory if companies were to start going down that track, because there's also very strong HIPAA health care privacy laws where your employer probably shouldn't be asking about your health care specifics. So I do not see that even in today's environment that would be a mandatory thing. And I would absolutely oppose any effort to make any mandatory aspect to any healthcare or specifically any vaccine. We are a free country. People, I think, make the best decisions for themselves and their family. But when it comes to the vaccine and the community at large, that there are certainly people that would like everybody to be vaccinated. And I think the reality is that at the end of the day, most people will, and that's enough. That's enough to protect the community. Is there any specific on that? I think that covers it. I'd like to talk a little bit briefly about the broadband as well.
Sure, go ahead.
We have some bills moving in the House. I do like Senator Zay's bill. I talked with him recently about it. One of the things that I liked about his bill that includes an interactive portal for every Hoosier to be able to go on and put in what their internet service is like and what gaps they have. Another part of the efforts going on broadband is to stop looking at the census blocks. So, I don't even think probably everybody that's called doesn't know what census block you're in, but you know what neighborhood you're in, and you know what service you have for internet and what your neighbors have. So this would allow you to get on there and request better internet, and then the providers would be able to see that, and then there'd be dollars available to bring that internet to your neighborhood. And the infrastructure, the companies that do the infrastructure would bid on neighborhoods and communities. Another thing about these efforts are not just looking at the contracts for the companies putting in the infrastructure. No, what we're shifting towards is if you're close, but just not close enough for the company to jump up and run fiber to your house or run more substantial connection to your house, there's going to be new dollars available to finger off from the main lines. So if a main trunk goes fairly close to your house, but normally you might have to pay a large fee to get it dug to your house. This will open up dollars for not just end to end, but everybody in the middle, everybody that can figure out. So now it's time to expand and broaden the accessibility and the availability of internet. Another part of our efforts, and I believe it's in Senator Zane's bill, is also to make sure that those cannot afford their monthly service, or to be able to afford getting upgraded service that normally you'd have to pay thousands of dollars for. There's money available in that bill for people that are on assistance that have lower incomes, and in this time and age, I think we're all finding that the internet and the availability of your quality of service is a lot more important than maybe it was 5 years ago. And I think I should look into it, because if you look at my screen here, I don't know what's going on, honestly.
Yes, thank you. You're right. Whether it's telehealth or learning,
Absolutely.
applying for a job, it touches many areas of our life.
School.
Thank you. Senator Walker, can you talk about COVID liability? The Chamber represents 550 businesses. I know there's a lot of discussion about offering immunity to liability due to COVID. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so that is one of the priority bills of the year. And I just said earlier, there's no official way to make a priority. But the unofficial way to do that is to get the bill a low bill number. And I think Senate Bill, is that Senate Bill 1 or is that Senate Bill 5? It's one of the two, I forget. But blanket immunity makes every trial lawyer nervous. And so everyone's nervous. It's not a new idea. It's not a new concept. There are already limited applications for blanket immunity. And every time something like that is discussed, you always have the caveats again of where there's not willful negligence, or if someone had a duty to know and didn't know, then that would void their immunity as well. So I think the concern started about the second week I heard the term COVID-19 being used in the media was what happens if I contract this at Walmart, or I contract it where I work, or I contract it XYZ. And then the problem being, how do you necessarily associate where you came in contact with the virus and where you work or shop or do business? And I think that this kind of language is trying to avoid particularly class action suits, I would argue, but any lawsuit pertaining to, um, we've already had questions about employers. What happens if someone says, I don't care what kind of fever you got, you need to get in here today because we're short 3 people already. What do I, as an employee, have a responsibility to do with a concern like that? But as an employer, what am I open myself up to? I think, again, if someone is knowingly putting others at a higher level of risk than what we can manage by the practices we all understand these days, there would be no immunity. But otherwise, the attempt is to stifle those class action suits. And of the attorneys that are in our caucus and the ones I've spoken to, they've actually expressed a little bit of surprise that there haven't not already been more attempts to move down that path legally, as many people are taking a wait and see right now. But I think again, one of the biggest issues has been, how do you show that any one particular action was the action that actually brought me in contact with the virus? It's very problematic, and I think those two elements will do what we want to do with this, is bracket off just the fact that we all live in a higher risk society than we did a year ago, and acknowledge that, and don't hold or create scapegoats for any one particular party or business or model, to where, well, if we all sue them, they'll pay for the vaccines or the treatment or whatever. So I think we can accomplish that. That bill did receive already its first testimony, and I don't anticipate that the language is going to be that complicated, because I think all 50 states are working on a model like this, and some may have already successfully passed it. Whereas we won't be out in front on this. We're not taking a leap of faith in doing something like this. I think it's very practical approach.
Representative Lauer, would you like to speak to that?
Oh, I think Senator Walker did a great job. We recognize that there's a lot of uncertainty in business and in schools for the liability with regard to this particular virus. And I think it's prudent. I support protecting general liability. However, I've been very strong on making sure that in cases of gross negligence, when you have situations that are clearly negligent, and not necessarily to do with the virus, but I want to make sure that that it's not a blanket liability for every situation. There are legitimate cases out there in civil disputes, and I think that's important to recognize. And I fully expect that will be in the bill. But in general, we don't want, for all you lawyers out there, excuse me, but we don't want a bunch of hungry lawyers going after our schools left and right because of cases of COVID-19.
Representative Lauer, let me shift the focus a little bit and ask you this. This is from Healthy Communities, CRH Healthy Communities Tobacco Awareness Team.
Mm-hmm.
They say Indiana hasn't had a tobacco tax increase in 14 years. We rank 41st for our smoking rate, 46th for our lung cancer rate, 39th for our tobacco tax rate. It's estimated a $2 tobacco tax increase would help improve health outcomes for 112,000 Hoosiers. Raising the cigarette tax is the most effective way to reduce smoking rates and provide needed revenue. do you support a cigarette tax this year?
Yeah, we talk about this every year, and I do recognize that there's a lot of people that would like to see cigarettes be banned, let's say. But no, I don't agree with that. It is true. You look at the CDC statistics that the vast majority, well, above 60% of tobacco users are lower income. And the real effect of that would be not everybody's going to quit, because I don't think it's also very wise to try to change people's through society, change their behavior through taxation policy. Um, People are individuals and they make their own choices. And from my perspective, if that were to occur, it would hurt people in the lower incomes the most. We don't need to be doing that during these times. And the revenue that you might that would be brought in from that is not a stable source of revenue, because the goal is to get people to stop smoking. So I don't think it's wise to rely on those taxes as a reliable source if that's your goal. So I am against raising the tax, because I think it hurts the people, working people, and people lower incomes the most. And this is the last thing we need to do during this difficult time for people.
Thank you. Senator Walker, do you have a response?
I do, Cindy. For years, I've been resistant to the idea of raising revenue via what traditionally we've called a sin tax. I'm gaining further, I don't know, acquiescence to the idea that we also all collectively, whether you like that system or not, pay for healthcare services across the board. We subsidize those that don't have resources to cover major illnesses, and cigarette smoking is a major contributor to those. So the decisions that I make as a driver of my car as to whether I obey the speed limits or not do have an impact on the health of others if I create myself to be a hazard and cause an accident and harm other people. Cigarette smoke is not passive. It actively is a carcinogen as well. Having said all of that, that means I'll entertain it. I will have to watch the language, the impact. And I think always one of the difficult areas is understanding the impact on retailers. When we talk about changing cigarette tax rates, is what does that do at the borders? We already have a disparity between ourselves and Kentucky that has been a boon for Northern Kentucky retailers for probably decades now. So are we further digging ourselves in a hole when, states such as New York has some of the highest tax rates, and they have a lot of bootleg cigarettes in New York. So, you don't like to talk about organized crime or syndicated crime, but that's actually part of raising cigarette taxes too. So I'd have to take all of those impacts into consideration, but it is something I would entertain this year.
Thank you. So here's a question from our county commissioners. The commissioners strongly support lowering or eliminating the local motor vehicle highway formula. They'd like to see local government have more control and flexibility over its spending. But we would ask that you remove the wheel tax requirement. Would you agree that this requirement penalizes those governments like Bartholomew County who consistently go to great lengths to maintain their roads while maintaining small staffs and overhead?
Well, I'll try that one. In deference to my commissioners, I love them. I don't think penalty is the right word, but I understand what they're saying. So the sentiment, the carryover from the ghost of Luke Kinley still is applicable in this area. Luke being the former chair of so many of the financial initiatives in the state regarding taxation. He always believed that if you wanted to maintain more flexibility locally, there were local tools to do that, and the wheel tax and others being those options, which is to why they've always been a requirement in order for certain funds to be made available. We do a lot with matching dollars these days, federal and state matching dollars. And so it still behooves locals to have a local revenue source to generate that matching money. Um, I agree. If the state didn't have highways and interstates to maintain, it would be great to push 100% of the money down to the county level, but we don't. So it's a shared revenue and it's a shared distribution. But those are not accidents, and they're not meant to be punitive. They're meant to um, uh, take the pain and spread that across all legislative bodies that have to entertain tax increases when it comes time to look at, are the rates commensurate to our expenses on roads. I want Bartholomew County to be efficient and effective. I want all counties to do that. I want the state to do that as well. NDOT has done a lot of cost-saving initiatives. They've used Six Sigma to try to analyze how roads are built, how they're constructed, how they're bid, how they're contracted, how they're managed, whether that should be private or public when it comes to the toll roads. We've done a lot of things looking for efficiencies, and still the price of tar and the price of bitumen and the price of asphalt continues to go up. So it's a reality of those provisions are meant to press everyone at the state and local level to have skin in the game when it comes to how much funding is available for local roads. And you'll have to do a lot of work to break that model, that paradigm that was created in the Kinley era, because I think a lot of legislators still operate under that approach. Now, that doesn't mean we can't adjust the formula. That doesn't mean that we can't release a larger percentage for the county roads. And there are some provisions that clearly reflect more of an agrarian approach to road system maintenance that doesn't really reflect the way people live and work and commute these days. Are the roads lasting any longer because fewer people are driving to work every day than they used to be? I don't know the answer to that. But those are all about rebalancing a formula that's taken years to implement, and as well as years to come up with the ideological approach as to how we do it the way we do it. So I'll have to spend more time with the commissioners and highway department and others working on that to reflect on that paradigm.
Thank you. Representative Lauer, do you have a quick response to that as well?
Quick response. Yeah, I'll respond. I appreciate the difficulty our local government and governments have in maintaining roads. As a former county councilman, I remember really having to stretch to find dollars to be able to maintain our local roads and highways and bridges. So I would the formula for maintaining our roads has a number of different buckets and a couple of different ways that the money flows. I've been a proponent of moving back towards where we used to be, where 55% or so, more than 50% is going to our local roads, bridges, and infrastructure. And in recent years, in 2017, that flipped a little bit. So now about 55% goes to the state highways and infrastructure, and 45 or so goes to locals. But it's more complicated than that, because there's also more funding available now. Funding was increased, and a portion of that, maybe a third of that, is coming from what are called our community crossing grants. So the city of Columbus, Bartholomew County, have been awarded since those programs started, a substantial amount of road money through that program. So I have talked to our local officials, and I hear their concerns about the ratio, which is a little bit different, and there's a restriction on how you can spend your local dollars, and I'm hearing that that we could use a little more flexibility there. The bill I think that you're mentioning ties it to the wheel tax. I'm against that. We don't have the wheel tax in Bartholomew County. I don't think our citizens here would be wanting to pay $50, $60, $80 more every time they register their vehicles than they are now. But I'm generally, I'm against tying those kind of funding carrots to whether you have the wheel tax or not in your area. Those always seem to come from those bills usually come from areas that have wheel taxes. So there's a lot to talk about there, and I'd like to see more dollars, more percentage of dollars going to our local communities.
Thank you. I'd like to get to a couple sort of COVID related topics. That seems to be a hot topic for many. There's a question about the PPP loans that many, I think there were about $120 million invested in our businesses in our county from the Paycheck Protection Program, the federal program. How will those be taxed at a state and local level? What action is being taken on that revenue?
I can start.
Okay.
So we have an alignment in Indiana with the federal taxation code. So we keep aligned with the federal tax code on whether on income and what income, how you calculate your income for taxable purposes. During the pandemic, the federal legislation, the CARES Act and the PPP, that came down under a different section of the code. So there's a little bit of mismatch there. The federal bill exempted that PPP income from taxation. What we found is that it doesn't automatically do that for the states and for Indiana specifically. So I will say we've had a lot of discussion about this. I can confidently say that that we will be looking to exempt that entirely, and the expenses, the business expenses that were written off from that would also be you'd be able to exempt those as well. I think it'd be a big hit on businesses. You know, one of the things we're working through with the budget is that that is a significant amount of potential, you know, taxation. I've heard upwards of $400 million over a 5 to 10 year period. So we're having to make sure that the budget accounts for that. And I've talked with leadership and members that working on the budget as well. And we're all in agreement that we do not want to see that relief be taxable to our businesses or individuals. And I'm going to fight for that.
Thank you. Senator Walker, I want to ask you a different question, if I may.
Sure.
Mike Hefner, owner and president of Express Employment, chamber member, how will the unemployment from 2020 affect unemployment costs for businesses in the upcoming year? Much of what I read says that the extra dollars were coming from federal funding, but I need to understand if that isn't the case. Will the state get involved?
So current statute on the unemployment trust fund has always required that any replenishment of that fund come from payroll deduction on business payroll. I am seeing that is not the case with this federal relief dollars, and that there will be the flexibility at the national level for Indiana to, we have already engaged in borrowing from the Federal Reserve to backfill the trust account. I think we've borrowed at this point over 400 million. I'd have to update my numbers. The belief is that we can use the CARE money to pay off those loans, So in a sense, it's a cash shuffle, so that we are still going to use the loans against the anticipated payroll monies. But in real effect, no, we are hoping that and again, this is already in the budget proposal from the governor, who doesn't have a bill, but it's a strong message, and I think it's one that will be overwhelmingly received. That we want to. Indiana was just digging out of the hole that we had back in 2008. From the last time that we dipped significantly into the trust account, and we had just paid off all of our debt under Governor Pence, and that wasn't all that long ago. So I think we're going to really work hard at not repeating that um, uh, extra pressure on payrolls at a time when we least can afford to do so. The whole idea of insurance is to pay for it when you don't need it, and then use it when you don't have the money. And unfortunately, unemployment insurance is kind of funded backwards. We deplete it, and then we put the pressure on payroll deductions to pay for what we already spent when times were maybe harder, when we don't have the recovery yet. It's really backwards, but I think we are going to get that done this year. So the short answer is, it's our intention to minimize the impact, if any. I hope zero on local business payroll taxes.
Thank you.
And I am going to have to duck out. I apologize. I need to get ready for elections committee in 5 minutes. So I appreciate your time this morning and your attention to these matters. I'm glad you got 100. I don't know if you got 100 online or not, but hopefully
We did get up to 100.
Wow. Hopefully this has been useful to folks, and you all have a good day today. Thanks
Thank
again.
you, Senator Walker.
Okay.
Representative Lauer, can I ask you a question from Mary? Let's see, where did I find that? Mary Beth Rosca said she understands you have a bill on evictions and suspects it will hurt working families, and wants to understand how that squares with your stated position on the tobacco tax hurting working families.
Oh, well, I appreciate, and I encourage anyone to follow the bills going through the House. And I did file a bill that I filed last session as well on emergency evictions. And no, I don't agree that it would hurt working people. Absolutely not. My bill is focused on situations where you have an individual that's taken over your property and has no legal contract, or express or implied, and that doesn't go. My bill doesn't go towards evictions. It goes towards just a faster court proceeding. So most all of my bills have an impetus, or were brought to me from constituents. And in this particular bill was a situation, one of the most horrible I've ever seen, when we had a resident of Bartholomew County bought a new house, did everything legitimately, the title, the bank, everything, and they had their U-Haul, and they showed up at the house that they purchased. There was somebody living in the house, and it was a convicted felon, and there were drugs involved. And this constituent, it took him about 3 months to get that person out of their house. That's not right. That's not right. So my bill does not evict anyone. My bill just allows what's very normal in court proceedings to go to an emergency hearing. And what that does is move the timeline up from weeks to a matter of days for a judge to hear the case and a judge to make the determination as to whether that situation is an issue or not. But I encourage everyone to look at that bill and other bills that I filed. But I do appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you. In the last 2 minutes here, Ryan, would you address some of the changes to the State Board of Education and the Governor's Workforce Cabinet? This is HB 1397, HB 1563. Actually, it 1563 calls for uh, an addition of 2 members of the Commission for Higher Ed to join the governor's workforce cabinet. Can you speak generally to your stance on career tech ed and how
Sure.
those worlds need to be integrated?
Sure. Yeah, so we've done a lot of work over the last couple of years on CTE, on making sure that we have funding and more opportunities for kids to go into career paths that honestly they do very well in. Those are skilled technical trades and other very important skills. I talked to a friend of mine who's in the plumbing business the other day, and you can't find enough people. The jobs are all over the place for skilled technical work, and they pay well. So there's a number of bills going through. You mentioned 1563.
Yes.
Yes, that's I think routing through the education committee right now. It does expand the number of members on the governor's workforce cabinet. It also shifts some of the duties of that cabinet to take some additional duties on, including the certificates for skill, your technical training, also some technical issues with school graduation rates and appeals from schools, I should say, for changing their graduation rates and going backwards in time, I should say. It also brings a new commemorative, a very special diploma for our veterans that go through that program. I'm still studying how it would specifically affect our CTE programs here and in conjunction with our schools here. My goal is that we give our students more opportunities to go into skilled trades or to focus on academic side of university. We want to give the kids as much opportunity as we can afford them. I'm a very strong proponent of school to work programs, of our CTE, of our C4 program here in town. And one of the things I liked about that bill as well is that it allows schools to give some equivalent, which is equivalent, some STEM credits towards the Core 40 graduation, towards your graduation. So allowing some of those CTE classes to go towards your core graduation requirements, because they are high level on engineering, on math, on science. A number of those courses are. And I think also help encourage our local communities to rethink or not rethink, but to think out of the box to expand the types of courses and opportunities in each community for these tracks. And honestly, I think, even if you're not going into a skilled trade or you're not seeking a certificate for a trade, let's say you would like to go towards a PhD, and you're in high school and you want to go that route. Well, I think you should be able to get some, get some skilled training, because you might want to learn some skills. You might want to be able to do things, and just broadening the opportunities in our schools to get a solid education from all different aspects. But we do a fantastic job here in town. I really appreciate our public schools here, and our and how they work with our CTE programs and C4 in particular. But I will be, you know, if it's good for expanding those opportunities, then I'll be in favor of that.
Thank you. Yeah, strong STEM programs are really important to many of our employers here.
Mhm.
I want to wrap up. We're after 9 o'clock. We've had a good discussion. We've had 100 people listening in today. I'm so grateful to Senator Walker and to you, Representative Lauer, for sharing your time with us this morning and helping us to understand the issues at hand in this year's long session of the General Assembly. We'll be back on February 22nd at the same Zoom link you used today at 8 a.m. And those of you who submitted questions that weren't asked today, we will pick up with those at the next Third House session. So thanks again to all of you. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Thanks, Cindy. Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy, and thank you for all for joining. I really appreciate it. And feel free to also follow up with me individually through my office. I always appreciate hearing from you.
Yeah, thank you.